Whispers in the rain. It was the kind of night where the rain never seemed to stop, hammering against the windows with relentless fury. Emily stood at the edge of the old farmhouse's porch, looking out at the storm that had come out of nowhere. The sky had turned an eerie shade of gray, the clouds swirling like a storm had taken form in the very fabric of the heavens. The wind howled through the trees, and the distant thunder rumbled as if the world itself was being torn apart. Emily had come here to escape. She needed peace, quiet, a retreat from the noise of her busy life back in the city. The farmhouse had seemed like the perfect solution when her friend had suggested it. A little cottage tucked away in the woods, far from the hustle of daily life. The brochure had promised tranquility, but tonight Emily was beginning to feel a strange unease settle in her chest. She turned and stepped back inside the house, her boots squelching on the wet wooden floors. The air in the farmhouse smelled musty, like old wood and forgotten things. She had found it strange that the house seemed so old-fashioned, faded wallpaper, ancient furniture, and a fireplace that was barely used. But it wasn't until she had been here for a few hours that she realized the true eeriness of the place. It was quiet, too quiet. There were no sounds from the outside, no birds calling, no distant rustling of leaves in the wind. It was as though the whole world had been muted by the heavy rain. She had turned on the radio when she first arrived, but it was just static, an unsettling silence that seemed to echo in her bones. That's when she heard it, a faint tapping. It came from somewhere in the house, echoing down the hallway. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. She glanced around the room, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. No sign of movement, no reason for the noise. Yet the tapping continued, soft but distinct. It was coming from the attic. The thought of going up there sent a chill down her spine. She had never been fond of attics, the dark spaces filled with forgotten memories and dust. But curiosity got the better of her. Maybe it was just the wind or the house settling. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and made her way up the creaky stairs. The attic door loomed at the end of the hallway, an old wooden panel that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. She reached for the doorknob, but her hand froze just before touching it. A sense of dread washed over her, like the house itself was holding its breath. Still, she pushed through the feeling and twisted the knob. The door creaked open, revealing the darkness beyond. The flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating stacks of old boxes and forgotten furniture covered in sheets. The air smelled of mildew, and the floorboards groaned under her weight as she stepped inside. And then she heard it again. The tapping. This time it was louder, more insistent. Emily's breath hitched in her throat as she slowly turned, scanning the room. Her light flickered as if the battery were dying, and for a moment she thought she saw something move in the corner of the attic. A shadow? A figure? No, it was just her imagination, she convinced herself. But the tapping continued. She followed the sound, creeping toward the far corner of the attic. There, partially hidden under a pile of old blankets, was a small wooden box. The tapping was coming from inside. Her hand trembled as she reached for the box. It was cold to the touch, the wood slick with moisture. She slowly lifted the lid, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside was a doll. It was small and fragile, its porcelain face cracked in several places, its clothes stained with age. But it wasn't the doll itself that made her blood run cold. It was the eyes. They were wide open, staring up at her with an unnervingly lifelike gaze. Before she could react, the wind outside howled louder, rattling the windows, and the attic door slammed shut behind her. Emily spun around, her pulse racing as she fumbled for the flashlight, but the light flickered once more, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. That's when the whispers began. At first it was faint, like the sound of a distant conversation, but as she strained to listen, the voices grew louder, clearer until they filled the attic, surrounding her. The words were unintelligible, a jumble of syllables that made no sense, yet they felt oddly familiar. Emily backed away, the doll still in her hands, its glassy eyes never leaving her. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and the temperature in the attic seemed to drop, a cold draft swirling around her. Suddenly, the box slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The whispers stopped. And then, in the eerie silence that followed, she heard something else, a low, guttural growl like an animal in pain. She whipped around, shining the flashlight in every direction, but there was nothing there. No movement, no sound, only the oppressive silence. And yet, the air felt thick with something unseen, something watching her from the corners of the room. The growl came again, this time louder, closer. Panicked, Emily bolted for the door, but when she tried to open it, the knob refused to turn. The door was stuck, as if something was holding it shut from the other side. She pushed harder, desperate to escape, but the door wouldn't budge. Behind her, the growl grew louder, turning into a snarl, then a scream. Emily spun around, her flashlight beam dancing across the walls. In the corner, a shadow moved. Slowly, deliberately. A figure stepped into the light, a man, or something that had once been a man. His skin was pale, stretched too tight over his bones, his eyes dark and hollow. His mouth hung open in a grotesque, silent scream, and his hands reached toward her with fingers like claws. Emily screamed, her voice lost in the storm outside as she shoved herself against the door, trying to force it open. The figure lurched forward, its breath coming in ragged gasps, as though it were starving for something. For her. With one final push, the door flew open and Emily stumbled into the hallway, her heart racing. The figure didn't follow her. It stayed in the attic, but she could still feel its presence like a dark cloud hanging over her head. She ran down the stairs, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the heavy rain outside. When she reached the front door, she flung it open and stepped out into the storm. The rain was cold, soaking her to the bone, but she didn't care. She didn't look back as she ran toward the woods, away from the house, away from whatever nightmare it had become. But as she ran, she heard the whispers again. Faint at first, but growing louder, rising above the storm. They were calling her name. And she knew deep down that no matter how far she ran, the house would always be there, waiting. The drizzle that followed rain had begun early that evening, a thin, lazy drizzle that clung to the windows and whispered against the roof like a warning. The town of Fairhill had long been known for its rains, gentle, constant, but harmless. But that night something changed. Michael Rowe, a 35-year-old freelance writer, had rented a quiet countryside cottage in Fairhill to escape city noise and meet his looming deadline. He liked isolation. Quiet helped him think. Or at least that's what he thought before the whispers began. His first night was peaceful. The patter of rain was almost therapeutic. But on the second night, something strange happened. Just past midnight, Michael heard what he thought was someone talking outside his window. He looked out. Nothing but darkness and rain. The next night, the voice came again. This time, clearer. "Let me in." He leaped from his bed and rushed to the window. No one. The front yard was empty. The gravel path slick with rain, trees bending under the weight of the drizzle. He told himself it was the wind. The fourth night was worse. Michael had dozed off on the couch when a sharp knock rattled the front door. He froze. 3 knocks. Then silence. He tiptoed to the door, held his breath, and peered through the peephole. No one. But when he opened the door, a single black feather lay on the welcome mat, soaked, glistening, and strangely warm. The next morning, he found wet footprints on the wooden floor, starting from the front door and ending at the fireplace. He hadn't left the door open. He hadn't walked around in wet shoes. The prints were small, barefoot, child-sized. That evening, he called the caretaker, Mrs. Adler, who lived in a house down the road. She was in her late 60s and knew every strange tale that Fairhill had buried under its fog. She arrived with 2 umbrellas and a face that looked like it had seen things it couldn't speak of. "You heard her," she said after he nervously recounted the incidents. "Heard who?" "The girl. From the storm." Michael chuckled uncomfortably. "Is this a local ghost story?" Mrs. Adler didn't smile. "She drowned here, in that very field, about 50 years ago." Michael waited for the punchline. None came. "She died waiting for her father to return," she added. "He never did, but she kept knocking." Michael thought she was insane. But then she pulled something from her coat pocket, a photo. A young girl in a raincoat standing in front of the same cottage. Her eyes were huge. almost too large for her face. She was holding a black umbrella. Michael shivered. That night, he stayed up. The rain didn't stop. At 2:13 a.m., there was a knock. 3 slow taps. He didn't move. Then the voice again, right by the window. "Let me in." This time it wasn't faint. It was right there, right outside. Michael grabbed his phone and hit record. "Who's there?" he shouted. No reply. The next morning, he played back the audio. There were no words, just a faint, high-pitched sobbing and then a whisper. "You said you'd wait." The next evening, the power went out. Only the fireplace and lightning lit the cottage. The rain grew violent, slapping the windows like it wanted to get in. Then he heard it, footsteps upstairs. He hadn't been up there in days. He grabbed the flashlight and climbed slowly. Each step groaned like a scream. The door to the guest room creaked open on its own. Inside, the girl stood facing the window. Her raincoat was dripping. Her feet were black with mud. Michael's flashlight flickered. When it steadied, she was gone. In her place, the black umbrella folded and resting on the bed, Michael ran. But every road from the cottage curved back to it. It was like the world outside had vanished. Just rain, trees, and the winding gravel path that led nowhere but home. He locked himself inside, burned the feather, burned the umbrella. But at 3:07 a.m. she knocked again and whispered, "Burn me too." The final straw came when he found his manuscript erased. Every page of his novel replaced with a single sentence, "Let me in." Over and over, he tried to leave, tried to scream, but the rain muffled everything. He decided to take his own life. But when he went to the attic with the rope, he found something else instead. A journal, leather-bound, water-damaged. Inside were pages of someone else's handwriting, entries that began the same way he had. "I came to write. Now I can't leave." The last page was smeared with blood. It read, "If you hear her voice, it's already too late." Michael was never seen again. The cottage stands empty now, but every rainy night, passers-by say they see a girl in a raincoat standing at the window. Sometimes she's holding a feather, sometimes an umbrella, and sometimes she's just knocking, waiting for someone who said they'd come back. The Rain at Black Hollow Road. It was nearing midnight when Ethan and Melissa took the wrong turn. They were on their way back from a weekend cabin trip, tired and quiet in the car. Rain began drumming on the windshield as the GPS recalculated for the 3rd time. "We should have turned left," Melissa muttered. "I did," Ethan replied, squinting at the map. But it showed nothing now, just blank green. A crooked wooden sign flashed past. Black Hollow Road. The road narrowed quickly, trees arching overhead like ribs. The rain fell harder, hammering the roof. A branch scraped the side of the car. "We should turn around," Melissa said, nervous. But the road was too narrow. Then, a figure appeared in the headlights. Ethan slammed the brakes. They skidded but didn't hit anything. Melissa opened her mouth to scream but froze. There was no one there, except a soaking wet child's shoe in the middle of the road. A mile down, they saw a house. Old, Victorian. Its porch light flickered, the only source of light for miles. Desperate, they stopped. Melissa knocked. The door creaked open slowly. The house smelled like wet wood and rot. "Hello?" Ethan called. No answer. They stepped in. The door slammed shut behind them. They found a dusty study lit by a dying fireplace. A journal lay open on a desk. Melissa picked it up and read aloud. "The rain never stops. It feeds her. If you see her shadow, it's already too late. She waits behind the mirror." A sudden clap of thunder made them both jump. That's when Melissa noticed it, the giant mirror on the far wall. It dripped with water, not on the surface, from inside. They moved closer. Ethan wiped the glass. Behind the mirror, a girl stood in a white dress, soaked, her head tilted unnaturally. She didn't mimic their movements. She grinned. Suddenly, the lights died. When they turned their phones on, the mirror was shattered, and in the shards, the girl was gone. They ran upstairs. Every door they tried led to the same hallway, looping endlessly. Rain poured harder outside, almost horizontal now. Ethan opened a bedroom door and screamed. Inside was a wet crib, filled with moldy stuffed animals and children's bones. The window blew open. A small handprint appeared on the inside glass. Melissa found it first, a door behind a loose wallpaper panel. Stairs led down into darkness. From below came the sound of dripping and crying. Ethan tried to stop her, but Melissa descended. In the basement, she found a rocking chair. Rocking on its own, a voice whispered from behind her, "You're her now." She turned. The girl from the mirror was inches from her face. Ethan found Melissa sitting still at the base of the stairs, staring blankly. She didn't speak, just smiled slowly. From that moment, she acted strangely. Her eyes too wide, her voice too calm. The rain outside never stopped. That night, Ethan heard something crawling in the walls. He found the mirror again, and in the reflection, he saw Melissa behind him, holding a knife. But when he turned, she was asleep. At dawn, Ethan carried Melissa out of the house. The car still worked. They drove for hours, but the road never ended. Every turn led them back to the same place. Eventually, they saw the wooden sign again. Black Hollow Road. Melissa whispered, "She won't let us leave." Ethan woke one morning to find the car empty. Melissa was gone. Outside, the rain had stopped. In the back seat sat a new journal, open to a fresh page. "She lives through the ones who find her. I can't stop her now. I can only warn you." At the bottom was scrawled, "Knock twice, then run." Ethan turned. The mirror stood beside the road in the trees. From behind the glass, Melissa knocked once, then again. Knock, knock! Rain poured like sheets of glass as Leah drove through the countryside, her GPS flickering. She was alone, far from home, the storm swallowing the road ahead. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the car sputtered and died. Dead battery. No signal. No nearby houses. Just woods. Then came the first knock, not from outside, but from the trunk. Leah froze. Another knock, louder, insistent. She stepped out, drenched instantly, the flashlight on her phone barely cutting through the mist. She walked to the back of the car. Silence. She slowly lifted the trunk. Empty, except wet footprints inside. Human, facing inward. She slammed it shut and got back inside, heart pounding. Then came the second knock, this time on the passenger window. She turned. Nothing there. Rain. Darkness. She locked the doors, tried calling again. No signal. The windshield fogged up. She wiped it and found a message written in the condensation. "Let me out." Her breath caught. Then, the radio turned on by itself. Static. Then a voice, whispering, "She's almost free." Leah screamed and tried to start the car. Nothing. Suddenly, the back seat light flicked on. She turned slowly. A soaking wet girl sat there, smiling with cracked lips and hollow eyes. You opened the trunk. The car doors unlocked on their own. Rain poured harder, and outside in the woods, dozens of pale figures stood watching. Knock, 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 all around her. The passenger in the rain. It was a stormy night when Daniel picked up the hitchhiker. She stood on the roadside in a red raincoat, hood drawn low, thumb out, soaked. It was 2 a.m., the road deserted. He almost drove past, but something in his gut made him slow down. She got in without a word. Daniel glanced at her, pale, shivering, long black hair clinging to her face. She smelled like wet leaves and cold air. "Where you headed?" he asked. She pointed forward. "All right, no problem." They drove in silence. The windshield wipers thumped like a heartbeat. Rain hammered the roof. After a mile, Daniel noticed something odd. Her feet were bare, covered in mud. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. He flicked on the dome light. She wasn't there. Just a puddle of rainwater on the passenger seat. Daniel slammed the brakes. The car skidded, stopping in the middle of the highway. Breathing hard, he looked around. Nothing. Then, tap, 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 from the backseat window. He turned. The girl was sitting in the rear seat now, face pressed to the glass, eyes pitch black, grinning. He floored the gas. She was gone again, but every few miles she reappeared, sometimes in the mirror, sometimes on the roadside again, sometimes whispering in the radio static, "Take me home." He finally reached a gas station, blinding lights, people, safety. He ran inside, shaking, explaining to the clerk. The clerk listened, nodded slowly, and pointed to the wall and where an old newspaper clipping was framed. "Local girl killed in rainstorm 1993, seen by dozens over the decades, always barefoot, always looking for a ride." Daniel turned pale. Outside, the girl stood by his car again, this time smiling wider, waiting. The last stop. It was nearly midnight when Rachel boarded the last bus out of town. The storm had already begun, fat droplets smacking the pavement like nails from the sky. She pulled her coat tighter and climbed aboard, shaking rain from her hair. Only 3 other passengers sat scattered through the dimly lit bus, their faces barely visible beneath flickering ceiling lights. She took a seat near the back. The bus hissed and groaned as it rolled back into the night. Raindrops painted the windows in twisting rivers. Outside, the world was a blur of shadows and water. Streetlights glowed like dying embers. Rachel plugged in her headphones, but the sound never played. Instead, a whisper crackled through the silence. "We never left." She yanked the earbuds out, heart pounding, looked around. The passengers hadn't moved. None of them blinked. The bus passed the same gas station twice, the same tree with broken limbs, then the same billboard, again and again. Rachel stood and approached the driver. But where the driver should have been, there was only an empty seat and wet handprints on the steering wheel. The bus was driving itself. One of the passengers turned his head. His skin was pale and sagging, eyes hollow black pits. He smiled. Another did the same. They rose slowly with impossible stiffness. Rachel ran. The exit doors wouldn't open. Outside, the rain poured harder, almost screaming against the glass. Inside, the dead whispered, "One more seat left." She banged on the glass, screamed, but the streets outside were empty. Every time she turned back, the bus looked longer, darker, filled with more shadows. And then she saw it. Her own body, still in the back seat, staring out the window, unmoving. The last stop never came. The bus still drives through the stormy night, picking up the lost, the lonely, the ones who board in the rain and never question the route. So if you ever ride a bus on a rainy night, look twice at the passengers. You might already be part of the route. Knocking in the rain. Maya had just moved into the old hill cottage. She wanted solitude, peace, and rain. The locals warned her, though. If you hear knocking during a storm, don't answer. Don't even look. She laughed it off. The first storm came 2 weeks in. Midnight thunder, relentless rain. Then the knocking began. 3 knocks, steady. Not at the door, at the window. She lived on the 2nd floor. Frozen in bed, she whispered, "Just the wind." Then again, knock, knock, knock. This time at the bathroom mirror. She didn't move, didn't blink. The knocking stopped. She fell asleep eventually. But in the morning, handprints were on the inside of the mirror. Small, childlike, wet. Night 2. Another storm. This time she locked every door and window. 14 a.m. A slow creak. Her closet door opened by itself. She held her breath. Then, knock, 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 inside the closet. She screamed, ran to the hallway, only to find the main door wide open, rain blowing inside. At the end of the hallway stood a little boy, barefoot, soaked, head tilted. "You didn't answer last time," he said. "Now I came in." The lights died. The hallway vanished in blackness. She backed into the bedroom and slammed the door, only to hear the same 3 knocks now from inside her own room, behind her. They found her a day later, alive but broken. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, just stared at the mirror, whispering, "He only knocks for the ones who live alone." Now on rainy nights, someone knocks at her hospital window from the 3rd floor. The girl at the edge of the rain. It always rained at Briarfield, but only at night. Locals said the rain was cursed. It brought her. Eli, a photographer from the city, didn't believe in curses. He came to document the rainstorms, drawn by eerie tales of a ghost girl who appeared only during thunderstorms. He set up his gear inside the old Briarfield Inn, now abandoned. The rain began at 11:06 p.m. on the dot. As he adjusted the lens toward the window, he saw her, a girl in white, standing still at the edge of the forest. She wasn't soaked by the rain, not even a drop. Eli snapped a photo. She vanished. Minutes later, she was closer, now on the road leading to the inn. Eli lowered his camera. She didn't walk. She blinked forward. Each time the thunder clapped, she was closer. In the camera's lens, empty road. Naked eye, she was right there. The rain intensified. Water began to leak inside, but only in the hallway. The air turned cold. His camera stopped working. He backed into the main room. Suddenly, the lights from his gear flickered. In a flash of lightning, she was inside, still dripping dry, eyes empty, mouth twitching, as if trying to smile but didn't remember how. Then she whispered, "Do you want to see where the rain really falls?" Everything went dark. The next morning, a hiker found Eli's gear, untouched, still recording. Only one photo was saved. The girl, inches from the lens, smiling, her hand against the glass, and behind her, an endless wall of black rain. Eli was never found. But if you stay in Briarfield on a rainy night, you might hear a camera click in the distance. The rain doesn't knock. When Jenna moved into her late aunt's cottage in Raven Hollow, she was told one rule. If it's raining, don't answer the door, no matter who knocks. She thought it was an old superstition, until the first storm. It started softly, just a drizzle tapping the rooftop. Jenna curled up on the couch, tea in hand, reading through her aunt's journal. Most pages were about gardening and village gossip. Then she found a line written over and over, "The rain doesn't knock." Thunder growled, the lights flickered, and then 3 sharp knocks at the door. Jenna froze. No one should be out there. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. She crept to the door, heart racing, and peeked through the peephole. No one. She backed away. Another knock. Louder. And wet footprints began appearing beneath the door, from the inside. She ran to the back door. Knock, knock, knock. It followed her. Suddenly, the rain grew louder, not outside, but inside. From the ceiling, droplets began falling. In the kitchen sink, rain, from her bedroom closet, dripping. Then she heard it. A voice outside, whispering her name, over and over. She covered her ears. It kept whispering. It knew her, knew she was alone. Jenna tried to leave, but every window was now showing rain. Not outside, but behind the glass, on the inside, and shadows behind them. She screamed. The lights died. And then the knocking came from every door, every window, every wall. One final whisper before it went silent. The rain doesn't knock, but I do. In the morning, the rain stopped. Jenna was gone. But the cottage door now opens by itself, only when it rains. Morning, rain stopped. Jenna gone, open by itself. Room 103. It was past 1 a.m. when Daniel's car broke down on a desolate mountain road. Rain poured in sheets, turning the windshield into a gray blur. No cell signal, no traffic. Only the winding road and towering trees, bending in the wind like watchers. He saw the neon glow just ahead, Everpine Motel, vacancy. Old, faded, but shelter. He grabbed his duffel and ran inside, water soaking through his clothes. The lobby was small, musty, and empty, until a man emerged from behind the desk, eyes too wide, smile too forced. Only one room left, he said. Room 103. The hallway was lined with peeling wallpaper and old portraits of grim-faced people. Room 103 smelled of mildew and something sour. He locked the door, tossed his bag on the chair, and collapsed on the bed. Thunder cracked outside. The rain grew louder, then softer, then loud again, as if something was brushing the windows. Then he noticed it. A second chair in the corner, facing the bed. Empty. When he turned away from it, he felt the pressure of eyes. At 2:37 a.m., he woke to the sound of the chair creaking. Slowly. Creak. Creak. Daniel sat up, staring through the dark. Lightning flashed. There was a woman in the chair, pale, hair soaked, mouth open in a silent scream. When the room went dark again, she was gone. He didn't sleep. The rain didn't stop. Every time the lightning flashed, she was closer, first by the chair, then beside the bed, then at the foot of it. He whispered to himself, "It's just my mind." But then the TV turned on by itself, static. A voice crackled through, "Room 103, it's always full." He rushed to the door. It was locked. He yanked and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. A wet hand slid around the edge of the bathroom door. Then her face. Twisted, dripping, screaming without sound. When morning came, the door swung open. Daniel ran. He didn't look back. But later, as he sped away from the motel, he checked the rearview mirror. There she was, in the back seat, still soaked, still watching. Everpine Motel still offers one room, Room 103. But once you're in, you never really check out.